Hey everybody, this is Tyler with Fortune Auto. Today we're going to show you how to install coilovers on your FL5. So we're taking the sway bar off on both sides so that the sway bar can articulate, and it'll make it easier for everything to move around. So we're going to do the unplug here, and then we're going to take the bolts off for the brake line and the bolts off for it's like the whole bracket for the wire harness and the brake line. That's just going to come loose. Next, we're going to do the other side. We're going to take the ride height sensor. Yeah, we're just going to remove this cotter pin, and using a pick will make it a little bit easier. Just pull back on it and it'll slide right out. So we're going to take that castle nut off, and we're going to use a tool later on to press this out. And we want to have a nut on there, but we don't want to use the castle nut because it's going to bend the tabs here. So we want to use a different nut that's solid and it's not going to damage it, or it's not going to be a problem if it does get damaged. We're going to use a ball joint press tool similar to this. We're going to slide it in there, being real careful not to damage the rubber boot. And you can line it up and then tap it on with a hammer. So now with the ball joint loose, you can kind of wiggle the whole assembly around and loosen that up, and you can get that bar out of the way. So now you've got more movement to work with. There's a bolt up top and a bolt down below. It's like a 17 and a 14. We're going to take both of those out. So we're going to take both bolts out, and then after that we'll be able to use a spreader tool that we've got to put in the slit in the back here. That's going to open up the knuckle, so free up the strut. This slit in the back, and that's what clamps down on the strut. So in order to loosen that up, we use our tool that's going to slide in vertically, and then when we twist it, it's actually going to open up the knuckle and it'll lock in place. You'll feel it lock in, and now that's free to actually allow the strut to actually slip out. We're just going to go ahead and loosen up the 3 top hat nuts. Our car has an aftermarket strut bar. Your car may not have one. Before you install the coilover on your car, you want to set your preload. This is a 6-inch spring, and we want to preload it to 1/4 of an inch, so we want to compress it down until it measures from the top of the spring to the bottom of the spring, 5 3/4 inch. Once you get your preload set, you can lock down the ring, and you're ready to install. You can use a jack if you're working on the floor. If you're on a lift, you can use an auxiliary jack and just lift it up into place and slide the strut into place. Once you got the shock in place, you can pull that spreader tool out. Put the bolts through. And we'll tighten those down. Now you can pull down on the ball joint, line everything back up. Back in. All right, we'll tighten that down, but we don't want to put the cotter pin in just yet because we'll go back and torque everything down to spec. Because the coilover is shorter than the OEM shock, everything is kind of out of alignment, so we're going to compress it down and try to get everything lined up. Now we can remove the jack. We're done with that for now. All right, we're gonna use the Fortune Auto sway bar end links. It's got these little spacers that go on first, and they're gonna slip in to the actual lower mount for the coilover. For the side that's going into the coilover, that's mounting to the coilover lower, you use that spacer. That's that spacer there. For the bottom, on the FL5, you don't need that spacer. So just go in straight through without the spacer. Yeah, so we'll tighten it down once it's adjusted properly, then we can tighten down the lock nuts on the adjustment. And for ride height adjustment, it's entirely up to you, but in order to do that, just loosen the locking collar, and then you can twist the body of the coilover to adjust the ride height. Once you get there, you can lock it down. Just snug it up, and then tighten the locking bolt. All right, so because the FL5 has adaptive dampening, since you unplugged it, you're going to get a warning light on your dash. And in order to get rid of that light, we're going to use this canceller kit. This is the module itself. It's going to plug into the OEM plug, and then it comes with all the mounting hardware necessary and instructions for install. So we got everything set up, and we're just going to find a place to mount it. So it's going to be out of the way. It's not going to hit anything. If we're turning, it's not going to be too close to the wheel. And we want to make sure the wiring is going to be laid out in a way that it's not going to get bound up anywhere. But I think we're pretty happy with that spot, so we can go ahead and take the backing off. All right, pretty happy with that spot. Stick it on there. Right, so with the adhesive holding in place, you can feed the zip ties through here for added security. All right. Just plug it back in, and then the white plastic piece, you just want to push forward to lock it in. We're just going to route the wires so that they're out of the way and not going to get bound up anywhere. So now we're going to go through and torque everything down. We'll just run through and I'll show you what the torque specs are. So the 17 mil is 90 foot-pounds, and then the 14 mil tucked in down here, that's 44 foot-pounds. Castle nut on the bottom of the control arm, 76 to 83 foot-pounds. And don't forget your cotter pin. All right, this link is 66 foot-pounds. And then this guy is 16 foot-pounds. Right, these two are 47 foot-pounds. And the 3 top hat nuts we're going to set to 38 foot-pounds. So now we're going to move on to the rear. First thing, we want to support the control arm with another jack and just keep that spring compressed until we get all the bolts out. Same thing we did with the front. We're going to disconnect the adaptive dampers. Just pull back on the plastic clip. It unlocks, and then press and disconnect. You can go ahead and take the spring out. Set of pliers, squeeze the tabs on the clip, just pull it out. All right, so the last 2 bolts in the top hat, it's kind of hard to show on camera, but it's tucked in all the way at the top. We're going to take both of those out and the shock will slip right out. We're going to start installing the new shocks. A new top hat design is in the works, so yours may not look exactly like this. It is directional. If it doesn't go in one way, just turn it 180 and it'll fit. Before we put the spring in, we want to be able to bolt this in first. If we put the spring in first, we're not going to be able to get the bolt in. And just a note with these spacers, the openings, there's a bigger opening and then the smaller opening. The bigger side slips on over there. So when you put it on, the bigger opening is the one that slips onto the knuckle, just like that. The spring perch is going to sit on top of the spring, and we're going to set it into the control arm. Just make sure everything's lined up. All right, and to adjust your ride height on top of the spring, this adjustment here is for your ride height. And then to set preload, you want to adjust the shock itself. But for a more in-depth explanation on how to set preload on a divorced rear, you can follow this link at the bottom of the video. All right, and in order to get this sway bar end link to line up, we got to loosen up the other side. Now that the other side is loose, we can line this one up. There we go. Torque specifications for the rear. This outer bolt, 51 foot-pounds. Sway bar end length is going to be 30 foot-pounds. And then the 2 top hat bolts, they're going to be 30 foot-pounds. And something to note, when you're torquing the 2 control arm bolts, you want to make sure the car is under load. So same process as the front. We're going to assemble the canceller with the mounting bracket. And I'm going to mount it on the shock body towards the front of the car. All right, now we have everything installed. Make sure you have everything torqued to spec. We're gonna go ahead and put the wheels on, set the car on the ground, and then we can set our ride height. Once you set your desired ride height, be sure to get a proper alignment done, and then that will complete your coilover install for your FL5. If you have any more questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to us via email or give us a call. We'd be happy to answer questions that you've got. Thank you for watching.